I'm Corbett Wall with DV Auction, here with your cattle market summary for the week ending January the 27th, where markets have suddenly turned bearish, not just on the board, not just in the sale barns, not just in the feedlots, but late Friday too at the Cattle on Feed report. And it's just we've been flying high pretty good, albeit at lower levels than what we were used to the last several years, but it's sure turned bearish for the short term anyway. Look at your board here on live cattle futures April contract. Monday started out up 20 cents, Tuesday down 77, Wednesday up 27, Thursday down $1.10, and Friday down a quarter to end the week at 117.32 on your April, which was down $1.65 for the week. You look at your spot February, it's at 118.32, which is about $4 under what fat cattle are actually bringing. But we know now that they're going to get cheaper here in the coming weeks, including this week coming up. But look down the road at your October fats on the board at 102.05, which makes you really scratch your head whenever you look at these guys giving these big prices for these turnout calves. Just because they want them so bad and they're looking forward to that cheap gain. But that's a long time to carry those cattle and not a whole lot of dollars to do it between what they're costing and what they're projected to bring come this fall. But look at your feeder cattle on the March contract. Monday was down 60, Tuesday down 50 cents, Wednesday down 32, Thursday was the big day, down 275, Friday up 35 cents and a little minor correction, but that was before the cattle on feed report come out. But March ending the week at 127.45, and that's down 382 for the week. You look at January, which went off the board at 131.71, which it always does, tied right into your CME feeder cattle index because they were down hard all through the later part of the week here. But you look at your fat cattle trade, which mostly occurred on Thursday. And through Thursday, they had 76,000 head, had some light cleanup trade on Friday at the lower end of the price range, or maybe even a little bit lower than that. But for the most part, your live fats brought from 120 to 122. We had a few pins on the Fed Cattle Exchange on Wednesday that brought 124, but never touched that out in the direct trade. And even some late sales in Nebraska on a live basis at 119. But that's mostly steady to as much as $2 lower. And your weighted average through Thursday was 121.40. It's going to go down a little bit more for that. So just going to be in the low 21s on your weighted average for a live steer. Dress trade 193 to 194, all 193 on Friday. And that was mostly $1 lower with your weighted average through Thursday sales a little over 193.50. At that cattle on feed report that came out on Friday, had your January 1st estimates on feed. The actual come in at 100%. Actually, it was just a pinch over last year, but 100%. Your estimates are at 99. That's not all that much bearish, but your placements just, it's so hard to hit those placements. The December placements come in at 118, which was even more than what November was, and we thought that was big. Your estimate was at 109, which is very, very bearish. And you just look at the people that held on to their cattle and waited to sell them later than what they normally did. They had some stockpile grass. They had a lot of hay and feed available. They didn't like the market earlier in the fall. They held on to those cattle and sold a lot of them in December, which made them go into the feedlots in. And there's just more calves around. We know that our herd's bigger than what it has been for several years, and we see now that we've already pulled back. We've already done building our herd. It always, the data always follows up, but the number of cattle that were placed in the feedlots was 5% more heifers than a year ago. So we knew that, I don't know whether it was they were keeping a lot of heifers back last year or they were dumping a bunch this year, but together it sure made a difference. But marketings, which is easy to hit, we know exactly how many fat cattle are slaughtered every day, and it come in at 107, which is a really impressive number, but that's exactly what the estimate was, so there's not going to be much change there. But it was a bearish report, and we can sure look for feeder cattle auctions to see that. Your board's going to see that on feeder cattle anyway, coming up this coming week. Box beef cutout values didn't do a whole lot, but did show some strength by not falling anymore. Your choice carcasses on the average trade for the week ended up at 192.09, which was up 44 cents, and it was a little bit better than that on Friday's daily trade. Your select carcasses average trade 188.57. That was up $1.19. Your spread is narrowing like it seasonally does. On this quote, it was 3.52, but on some of your daily sales, it was in the $2 range. But not a whole lot of difference between choice and select. But when 75% of your cattle are grade and choice or better, you can see how that would happen. At cash feeder cattle, earlier in the week we saw there was not a real good comparison because those early Monday, Tuesday sales the prior week didn't have many cattle in them because of the snowstorm that prior weekend, or the roads or just the mud conditions, and so it didn't have a lot of cattle to compare to. So they were quoting higher prices, but really that was a 2-week trend, and we saw our middle and late week sales gaining a lot of ground right after the ice storm there. So we saw some steady to 5 higher and some early sales like Oklahoma City and Joplin, and even spots $10 higher on grazing type cattle in Joplin and all through Missouri there. Missouri is a good place for those grazers in the Flint Hills and the Osage region. That's where they like to go get those good kind of grazing type calves, and they're buying them. They're going to background them here for 45, 60 days and let them hit the ground running when it's time to turn those cattle out in April. But they may have overstepped their bounds a little bit. We saw in a few spots that a flat 500-pound steer touching $1.80. That is getting up there for what we're looking at down the road. And probably some of these guys, after they see this cattle on feed and they see some of these lower markets coming up, they're going to wish maybe they hadn't dug in quite so deep, because they were having to bump heads with the guys up in Nebraska and Iowa that were buying the same size cattle to put on feed, because they like to feed calves like that and put a lot of days on them and really make them high quality cattle. But mid to late week sales turned your feeder cattle, straight up feeder cattle, $7.50 and up, $3 to $7 lower. We sure saw that in your Kansas sales on Thursday. We didn't have a real good test of lighter weight calves in your mid to late week sales, and they were mostly steady in a lot of those places. But got some muddy lots out there in the Midwest as after that rain and the ice and come through, and then we had some warmer type temperatures, not balmy, but up into the 30s and 40s, where there was a lot of melting taking place, and it just seems like the bottom drops out of those lots sometimes, and we saw that. And then later in the week it got colder, and it got cold enough overnight that those lots were firmed up and a little easier to maneuver there even all the way through the day. But we saw that most of your 8-weight loads of 8-weight cattle, 8-weight steers, no longer bringing comfortably in the 130s. By the end of this week, mostly in the mid to upper 120s, and that's a big change there. In Lexington, Nebraska, look at an individual quote there. 142 steers, or really 2 straight loads of 755-pound steers Friday at 3:30 on Beef Market Central there, brought 135.75, and that's a pretty impressive market. But Lexington is a top quality market there that really normally gives our highest prices for the week. So you are not going to see marks like that in many places, and especially when you get away from the middle and the sand hills of Nebraska. But on the road here with DV Auction, been up here in western Wisconsin for over a week now, videoing cattle for a big Daymar auction coming up February 11th and 12th. Individually videoing over 1,000 head of breeding stock, mostly red Angus. And you guys get on your DV auction schedule if you need a bull or you want to buy some replacement females or some bred heifers, because we've got a bunch of sales coming up, and we're really getting a full swing of production sales season here at DV Auction. But that's your cattle market summary this week. We'll talk to you on Wednesday.